Well, hello there, and we are back. It is Friday, May 15th, 2026, and this is episode 39 of the War, Sports, Politics, and Dragons podcast. As always, I'm David the Nerd Emperor, and will be your host for this session. Hope you're having a great Friday. Hope you had an interesting week. We certainly do live in interesting times, as the old, I believe it's a curse, says. Major election news in the UK. UK Premier Keir Starmer under assault. Voting district discussion here in America. Wow, it's been a wild week. I don't know where to begin, and to be honest, I don't even want to talk about politics this week. I want to see what happens next. I know that sounds strange, considering what I've been talking about, how I've, been talking about things in progress as they happen and trying to stay current. I want to see what the latest developments are, because I have the feeling that by the time this goes to press, as it were, that there will be changes. It's still, the situation in the UK in particular seems pretty fluid, with a bunch of ministers resigning and calling for Keir Starmer to do the same. Then here in America, the Democrats are playing the same old game of racial politics, and oh no, they're changing the districts so black people won't be represented in Congress. Black people will still be represented in Congress. Maybe they'll be represented by black Republicans instead of white liberal Jew Democrats. Not to harsh on the Jews, but I'm just saying, Steve Cohen was representing Memphis for 20 years, and it's supposedly a black district, and he's whiter than sour cream. Okay, so, whatever. They care about racial politics unless they're trying to get a crusty-ass white woman who's a CIA agent in as governor of Virginia on the Democrat ticket. Then they went ahead and voted against the black woman in that regard. Number of black candidates, Republicans nationwide, have lost to white liberal Democrats. So spare me the alligator tears about how black people aren't being represented. If you're that concerned about black people being in Congress, you'll vote for a black Republican, because hell, black Democrats are like slaves voting for the plantation owners. So let's be honest. Yes, I'm calling them Uncle Toms. You're damn right I am. Because they are. All right? If a political party enslaved my people for 200 plus years, I don't think I'd forgive them in 160. Call me crazy. Especially not if they created segregationist laws and things like Jim Crow and lynched 3,000 of my people over the years, and also lynched 1,200 people from another race who were trying to help me register to vote over the years. That created things like poll taxes, separate but equal, different colored people getting different types of water fountains to use, denying us goods and services at restaurants and businesses because of our race, and running the entire political apparatus for a century after manumission? No, I don't think I'd forgive the Democrats. Just as for the same reason I'm not going to forgive the Germans for the Holocaust anytime soon. And I wasn't directly affected, truth be told, by either of these things, but I'm not big on forgiveness. That's God's job. If a Republican was in the Klan and renounced it, like David Duke did, you wouldn't hear anything from the Democrats about, well, he made a mistake. Instead, they're running a guy with a Nazi tattoo for the Senate in the state of Maine, Graham Plattner. Oh, well, he was young and dumb. Okay. And the DUIs and the racist remarks and the remarks about how women should dress differently if they don't want to get raped and all this bunch of nonsense, how they should wear Kevlar underwear and all this bunch of stuff, they just sweep that under the rug. It's wild. It's really wild. If it wasn't for double standards, the left wouldn't have any at all. So, we're just going to laugh at that. And the waterheads who think that Zoran Mamdani has balanced the budget in New York City. Okay, he got rid of the budget deficit. Yeah, by cooking the books to make $8 billion of it go away temporarily, and then borrowing another $4 billion from the state, which is really federal money. So taxpayers all across America are paying to bail New York City out of its latest mess. And by the way, hate to break it to you, good old morons that voted for Mamdani or support him, he's going to have a budget deficit next year, too. It's going to be about $8 billion. And then I think it's going to be about 7.6 the following year. And then it's going to be 9 in 2029. But it won't be his fault. He's pretty much backed off on every promise that he's made. And, oh, look, hundreds upon thousands of people are fleeing the city because they don't want to be taxed into oblivion to support crackheads and illegal immigrants. But, we're evil and racist and homophobic for saying anything about anything like it. So, whatever. You have fun with that. You have fun with that, New York City. We won't be going. Nope. Oh, boy. I'm just not myself this morning. I got to admit, I got awakened by a knock on the door. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for anyone that lived here. They had the right address, but they had the wrong person. It's a process server looking for somebody who owes an electric company around here some money. What a hell of a way to be awakened in the morning by somebody who's trying to serve a subpoena. Nope, sorry. My name's not Kathy. At least, not unless I get really, really drunk. Then you might be able to call me anything except late for dinner. But whatever. Oh, boy. So, yeah, happy Friday. I did not do any show prep. I'm just flying with, I'm flying practically blind. Today is, of course, the anniversary of, I'm a big today in history kind of guy. So today is the anniversary, 1940, I believe, of Holland surrendering to the Nazis. On the 14th of May, the Luftwaffe bombed the snot out of Rotterdam. I don't want to sound casual about it when I say it, but they did. They lambasted the city with hundreds of tons of bombs from HE-111 and Do-17 bombers, and said that if the Dutch didn't surrender, they would hit the city of Utrecht next, and the Dutch surrendered. The royal family did manage to escape, led by Queen Wilhelmina, who spent the rest of the war in exile in Britain, trying to support her people from a couple hundred miles away and across the North Sea, basically, from the country she used to rule. But she re-entered Holland in the spring of 1945 as Germany collapsed. I think it was right after the war ended. She re-entered Holland and reestablished herself as the monarch. I mean, she was always their monarch anyway. It's just that she was kind of in absentia for a few years because of those people from slightly to the east. I'm just not myself today, but I'm doing my best. It's not been a good week. I'm just going to go ahead and come out and tell you that I had a terrible week and had some stuff happen that was just, I don't even want to get into it. I'm not like it's legal trouble. I'm not getting sued, or I didn't wreck a car or anything like that, but just had a bad start to the week. Didn't do the Monday podcast, apologizing for that. So it should be episode 40 today, but it's really episode 39. So I owe you one. Maybe I'll do an extra one next week. We'll see. But I want to start officially. I'm not even going to do the standard announcements. Those of you that know me know me. I'll just say you can follow us on Spotify and Amazon, Audible, and iHeartRadio. You can help us out through Cash App and Venmo. The handle is WSPD Pod. Help us get better equipment and pay the bills. We have a Patreon page. It's patreon.com/WSP Dragons. Got more stuff coming. Didn't get a lot accomplished this week. This week's pretty much been a scratch, but next week we've got a couple of meetings planned, and we're going to be doing some things. So Love's Crucible is out. 13 chapters of it are up on the website right now. Chapter 14 goes up this coming Sunday. First chapter is available there for free. You can become a sponsor to read the rest as it comes out, and as my future works come out, for just $3 a month or more. There are 4 tiers of subscribership, and we have people in the top tier too, and they get access to the Discord channel as well as a weekly members-only live session on Patreon. And we've had a lot of fun doing that for the last couple of months. There are, as it stands right now, 29, count them, 29 novels in the pipeline that I'm working on. The one that you're going to hear mentioned a lot lately is called The Mustard Seed. We've also got Diary of an Elf, which is basically a Dungeons & Dragons novel type thing. It's not endorsed by the people at Wizards of the Coast, but I don't think I want it to be. And the way I'm going to write it is it won't specifically mention anything germane or proprietary to that brand anyway. But what we're starting with today, and let's go ahead and get into the show itself, 10 minutes. Whew, quite a cold open, Dave. Anyway, what I want to start with is actually a correction of something I said in the last podcast. It wasn't a major thing, but we were talking about the end of the Battle of the Coral Sea, which was the first fight between aircraft carriers in history, and I mentioned that the USS Lexington was sunk in the battle, and that it was the first U.S. aircraft carrier sunk in World War II. I totally had a brain fart on that. I can't believe I forgot about the Langley. The USS Langley was a converted coal carrier, or a collier ship, that was made into an aircraft carrier in the, I believe, the 1920s. Its designation was AV-3. And while AV didn't mean a carrier of heavier than aircraft, that was the designation for it. I don't remember what AV meant actually. Like I said, I'm just waking up. So, but anyway, south of the island of Java on February 27th, 1942, the Langley, which was carrying 32 P-40 Warhawk fighter planes for delivery to Java, along with 33 pilots, and I think they had a dozen mechanics that they were taking to a place on Java called Cilacap. And I think the planes got off the carrier, but then the carrier was sunk by a bunch of Mitsubishi bombers, Bettys, the G4Ms, I think they were, or the G5Ms. Which one was it? I think the G4M is actually the Nell. In Allied parlance. Yeah, G4M was the Betty. Yeah, the G3M was the Nell. Anyway, a bunch of Betty bombers, along with some Zero escorts from the 23rd Air Flotilla, flying from the island of Bali, found the Langley along with the destroyers Edsall and Whipple, I think were their names, and sank the Langley with actually level bombing attacks. They weren't using aerial torpedoes that time. The Betty was actually a pretty good torpedo bomber, but they were given bombs for this mission, and the first couple of strikes didn't hit the Langley, but they managed to basically bracket her with bombs on the final assault, making it impossible for her to maneuver in such a fashion as to avoid all of them. So it was just a matter of time before they sank her. Excuse me, and she took 5 bomb hits, a couple of near misses, and went under on the 27th of February. So that was actually the first aircraft carrier that we lost to combat. Then, of course, in May, we lost the Lexington. In June, we lost the Yorktown. In September and October, we lost the Wasp and the Hornet. And for whatever reason, I can never remember which one got sunk first of the Wasp or Hornet. I think the Hornet got sunk first, but I don't recall. One was sunk by torpedoes from sub. The other was mortally wounded, and we ended up scuttling her, I believe. I'll double check that, and maybe I'll have to run another correction. But in any event, yeah. Ooh. That's where we're starting from today with, me still trying to wake up. I've been up an hour. I don't know why I'm still so sluggish. It's almost lunchtime as I record this, but we're going to move over to sports. Like I said, we're not going to do much with politics. Actually, we're going to do dragons next. We're going to do the 30-day D&D challenge, which is every day for 30 days. Of course, I'm doing it every podcast for 30 podcasts. We're doing a different topic, and this one is day 13. What is your favorite trap or puzzle in D&D? And I'm torn between two things. The first being riddles Riddles in the Dark. I mean, that chapter from The Hobbit where Bilbo and Gollum are asking each other riddles. To set the scene for those of you, if there's anybody listening to this that hasn't read The Hobbit, for one, shame on you. It's actually a very quick, very easy, very good read. For another thing, what has taken you so freaking long? Okay, I read it when I was 11 or 12. Actually, when we do anecdotal evidence, I'm going to talk about the Hobbit Incident of 1983. That's what we'll talk about. And yeah, so anyway, in The Hobbit, Bilbo, of course, is gone with the dwarves on their little adventure. He's lost in the mountains, and inside the mountains in the caverns, he stumbles on a ring, puts it in his coat pocket, and then Gollum finds him. Well, Gollum had found the ring, not found it. He had murdered his cousin to acquire it, as we learn from reading The Lord of the Rings, and had possessed it for hundreds of years, and had misplaced it. The ring was semi-sentient and could resize itself whenever it basically chose, so that it would fall off the finger of whoever was wearing it. And it fell off his finger, I would have guessed, when he was out on one of his little excursions to find a goblin to strangle and then eat. Well, Bilbo found it, and in the Riddles in the Dark segment of The Hobbit, they're asking each other riddles, this thing all things devours, trees, birds, flowers, and so on and so forth. And finally, the last riddle, as it were, that Bilbo asked wasn't a riddle like 30 white horses on a red hill. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still. What are you referring to? Well, you're referring to teeth. The white horses being the teeth, the red hill being the gums. First they champ, then they stamp, which is them chewing, and then they stand still. So Bilbo had run out of riddles and was fingering the ring that he had in his coat pocket, or maybe it was his vest pocket, I forget now. And he said, "What have I got in my pocket?" Well, Gollum lost his friggin' mind because it wasn't really a riddle, it was a question. And he said it wasn't fair and wanted 3 guesses. And he actually made 4 guesses. He got the first 2 guesses wrong, one of them being his hands, because Bilbo had just had his hand in his pocket and had just taken his hand out when Gollum said that. Nope. And then after guessing wrong twice, his third guess was string or nothing. And as Tolkien points out in the book, that's actually 2 guesses. So the Riddles in the Dark thing, I love a good riddle. There are a lot of them out there. I know that I wish I could remember the name of the company. I can look it up real quick, but hold on a minute. Trying to find it. Riddle Rooms #1 Dungeon Dilemmas. This was a book that was made as a role-playing accessory. I'm trying to find the listing for it right now. It was made in 1993. And I can see the cover. I'm looking at the Amazon listing for it, but I cannot find the name of the book. Cloud Kingdom Games. I don't know if Cloud Kingdom Games is still even around, but they put out a number of really good and useful role-playing accessories that were system agnostic. I don't think Cloud Kingdom Games, the role-playing company, exists anymore. Now all that you see when you type in Cloud Kingdom Games is... Oh, well, there they are. Yay, they're still around. Cool. CloudKingdom.com. Cloud Kingdom Games put out a great book called Riddle Rooms 1 Dungeon Dilemmas. And they had a second one. Oh, they still have the Riddle of the Week. Oh, my God. I might be doing this every now and then. This is so cool. So here's... Wow. Riddle of the Week. Let's see if I can figure this one out. Okay. This is from Tower of the Riddle Master, one of their products. Touch me and cry, arrest me and die, break me and pine, heal me with time. Huh. The guess is exactly one word, and there's a way actually to get oh, I know what it is. Heart. I got it right. The answer is heart. Touch me and cry. If you touch someone's heart, as they say, it's a sentimental thing, as the hint lists. And arrest me and die, cardiac arrest. Break me and pine, a broken heart. And heal me with time. Time heals all wounds. So there you go. There's your answer. And I like that. I'm giving that one 5 stars. It was right in the middle range of difficulty. It took a second. And I actually needed a hint. So that's cool. But yeah, Cloud Kingdom Games has some great riddles. If you're interested in their stuff, they're still around. I would strongly recommend getting their products. I've got 2 of their books in PDF and 2 of their books in hard copy. The same 2 books, actually. And Riddle Rooms is still around. They had a second Riddle Room book, I thought. But I don't remember what it was called. But they have a number of riddles, and there used to be a way where you could sign up for a mailing list where they would send you a riddle every week. Let me see if they can still do that. I don't know. Let's look. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I'm live here. What am I doing? So, sorry guys. I'm not myself today. This is going to be the most disjointed broadcast I ever do. So, anyway, Riddles in the Dark and riddles in general, I love them. Then you have my good old boy Grimtooth the Troll from Flying Buffalo Games. And I think Flying Buffalo is still out. Let's look. Flying Buffalo Games is a game company. Yeah, they're still around, I think. Well, Rick Loomis is the guy who started the company. And he's still around. Webbed Sphere purchased Flying Buffalo 5 years ago, and as part of the acquisition in 2023, Flying Buffalo's entire line of role-playing games was taken over by a company called Rebellion. Hold on, I'm looking it up right now. But Flying Buffalo has Grimtooth. Grimtooth, of course, is known for Grimtooth's traps. And there was a series of 5 or 6 of these books, and they are absolutely great books. They've got all kinds of ridiculous and absurd and brutal traps, and I think my favorite is the shooting gallery. Shooting as in CHUTING, like you go down a chute. The way this trap works is you're in a dungeon, an underground setting, or maybe you're in a castle. And you step on a spot in the floor that's actually a trap door. You fall through the trap door, and you slide down a lengthy chute in the dark, and you're eventually ejected out of the chute into a room that's an archery range. So you take a little bit of damage from falling down the chute, and then you're plinked with arrows repeatedly by whatever is in the archery range, waiting for a new target to appear. So that's my favorite physical trap. I love the shooting gallery. I've not used it yet, but I think it's probably the most hilarious one of all. There was one other thing that was a sort of trap, and what it was they were coins, but they weren't really coins. They looked like coins. They were made of metal, and they were shaped like coins, but each side had a picture of a brain on it. And as you collected more and more of the coins turned out actually they were brain cells. And as you collected more and more of the coins gathered mental strength and eventually did things to you as a result of this hive mind being collected by some unwitting adventurer plundering a tomb or a lair or whatever. So I would say, though, that, gun to my head, pick one. I got to go with riddles in general. There are a couple of puzzles that are fun as well, but I won't get into them. I would say that, that's it right there. I would say the shooting gallery is it for the physical traps, but for riddles, I absolutely love a riddle. So there we go. Now we're going to talk real quick, switching gears to sports. We're going to talk about baseball, but no, I'm not going to be lamenting the Orioles' latest milestone in mediocrity. We're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to my heart and is something that I'm trying to integrate into the world of Trinith, my campaign world, and the setting for all the gaming products that I'm going to be producing. What if there was baseball in a fantasy role-playing setting? How would that operate? Now, let's assume that we're using baseball with rules similar to what we have nowadays. Now, not the same exact rules that we have now. Of course, there would be no instant replay. There would be no challenging of calls and things like that. There also wouldn't be that nonsense where they start with a runner on second base in extra innings, which is something that the pros took from high school softball rules. The National Federation of High School Rules, which are used by pretty much every public and almost every private school in America for their various sports. Under NFHS softball rules, the last batter of a previous inning starts the next inning on second base if a game goes extra innings. Of course, that would have to be tied. And I think that's stupid. They're trying to speed up the game, and baseball's not a game that's meant to be played at speed. Baseball is a game that is supposed to involve a little bit of time and a little bit of thinking. And to be honest, if I sit down to watch a game, I want to spend a couple of hours watching a game. I don't want to go to a baseball game that lasts 42 minutes. Okay, the shortest baseball game I ever watched was actually a county Little League championship in 2009, and it lasted an hour and 6 minutes. It went the full 6 innings and was an hour and 6 minutes. It was a bit of a pitcher's duel, and it was a heck of a ball game. I watched it actually in the town of Trapp, Maryland, where I lived. I would have walked to the ballpark because it was in walking distance, but the previous weekend while on vacation, so here's part of anecdotal evidence right here. I can tell you this story. Part of the the main reason I didn't walk was because the previous week while on vacation, we had a timeshare at this point, and our little girl Paige was just 8 or 9 months old, so she was still a babe in arms, and we were leaving the condo where we had the timeshare to go out to eat at this really nice restaurant. And I was carrying Paige in our arms. The boys were getting in the van. This was back when we had that Toyota Sienna van, the tank theater, as I called it, because it had a DVD player, and people in the second row could watch a DVD and watch a movie, put on headphones, and enjoy a film. And that was part of the reason my wife bought it. Was because, at the time we had two sons that were 5 and 2, and we could sit them, in their seats in the second row and turn on cartoons or something and let them watch a movie while we were taking our trips to Florida, because we used to go to Florida almost every year. Because my wife's one of those Disney people. We'll tell that story some other time. But anyway, we're walking out of the condo to go to the car, and the boys are in front of me, I think, and the wife is still in the room coming out, and I managed to step in just a fashion that I caught my right, basically, it was a 4-inch curb. These are just 4-inch curb steps. There were 2 of them. It was basically, you take a step, you're on a 5x5 cement pad. You take another step, you're on the sidewalk, and then you take get off the sidewalk, you're in the parking lot, and so on and so forth. Very simple operation here. I'm trying to walk the 30 feet from the door to our condo where we had the timeshare to the car, and I'm carrying our little girl Paige, and I managed to step wrong and twisted my ankle. Well, as I go down, I tried to compensate and catch myself by moving the other foot. You try to move to catch yourself with the other leg. Well, I managed to twist that ankle too. So now, and at this point, the pain is shrieking at me. This all happens in a second and a half. And the pain is shrieking at me, and I lost my grip on our daughter. Well, she landed on the sidewalk on her butt, thank God. But, she's 8 months old and she's falling down, so she's not really able to catch herself. And she falls over on her side, and she scratches the side of her head on the sidewalk. Well, meanwhile, her idiot father, me, I managed to sprain both ankles and roll in the opposite direction, and I find myself, my head laying between two bushes. Looking up, both my ankles badly sprained, wondering what in the blue hell just happened. So we go to the hospital, and, I'm taken to the ER in an ambulance. I can't stand up, and at this point I'm like, 280-pound dude. And it took a little bit of doing to get me on the stretcher because I really couldn't support any weight on my ankles. And get me in the emergency room, run x-rays. They do a x-ray and CT scan on our daughter just to be safe. She's fine. She turns out fine. And I've got two ankles sprained. Well, they gave me crutches and wrapped my ankles up and sent me on my way. Oh my God, I was never in so much pain. The irony is I don't think we ever paid that ER bill. So, well, we got the illegal immigrant rate. We paid the same amount illegal immigrants pay. So there you go. That's fair treatment, right? Yeah. Don't get me started on what I think about the healthcare system and its costs in any event. But yeah, so a few days before I had to go to this county Little League championship, I had sprained both ankles. And even 5 days later, having spent a majority of that time sitting on the couch with both my feet propped up, I still was a little tender in one ankle in particular, my right ankle, because I've actually sprained both ankles probably 7 or 8 times in my lifetime. I fall down a lot. Gravity and I hate each other. It's a little tender walking, so I couldn't walk to the Little League park, so I drove my car, which might have been 3/4 of a mile, taking the roundabout route, whereas it was 4/10 of a mile, maybe half a mile, walking it. It was a pretty quick walk, basically 3 blocks, and then across a field if I walked it. Otherwise, I've got to go out, get on Maple, take a left, go down Main Street at half a mile, and then pull into the parking lot of this place. So, well, by the way, the ballpark was named after Frank Home Run Baker, who played for, among other teams, the New York Giants, and is a Hall of Famer. And I think I've talked about spending some time with his daughter-in-law, Lois, back in 2003, talking to her and getting a tour of the house where she lived. It wasn't Mr. Baker's home, it was her home. It might have been a home she and her husband, his son, had, but in any event, I got to see a lot of very old sports memorabilia, and it was a fascinating conversation talking to a lady who had, a window on classic baseball from 100 years ago. But anyway, I got to the ballpark, and it was a county championship. In Talbot County, Maryland, there are two Little League organizations. One is Easton Little League, which represents the town of Easton, the county seat of Talbot County. And then the other one is Home Run Baker, which essentially represents every other part of Talbot County. Now, imagine Easton being in the center of a clock and all of the area around the clock being a different baseball league. That's pretty much how Talbot County is organized. It might not be the exact center of the clock, but Oxford Little League, St. Michael's Little League, Cordova Little League, Trapp Little League, all the teams from those areas are part of Home Run Baker, whereas Easton Little League includes specifically Easton. And they had a county championship. I don't know if they do this anymore. Little League numbers have dropped off so incredibly much that Little League and the Little League is how heavily regulated it's become. Little League, as one parent once said, is going to regulate itself right out of business. But in 2009, they did have a county championship for Talbot County, and it was just a bragging rights thing. It wasn't a playoff thing as part of the official Little League system. But Home Run Baker took on Easton Little League, and I think the final was either 2-1 or 1-0. It was a heck of a ball game. I won't name any names of the players involved now because I don't remember all of them. But I do remember there were two brothers that played for the Home Run Baker team, and one was 12 years old and one was 9. So they were at both ends of this bracket of Little League, and they were. And the older brother was the pitcher who I believe got the win in the game. But yeah, the game lasted less than an hour. I want to say an hour and 9 minutes, an hour and 6 minutes, something like that. It was a very short but exciting game, and much as I enjoyed the game and appreciated the fact that it was a short game, I don't, as a rule, like short baseball games. I don't mind if they go by fairly quickly. When I worked for the paper doing sports, I didn't mind that they went by fairly quickly because it gave me more time to make deadline. But if you're talking about a 4 o'clock ball game, a half hour from my house, because I used to write from home, thanks to cloud-based computing, and I actually pretty much pioneered the concept of telemarketing at the paper, or telecommuting. I was pretty much the first guy to telecommute at the paper because my boss allowed it due to the fact that we had 2 and then a third child, 1 and then 2 of whom were special needs. So he understood the necessity of me being home as often as humanly possible. So I would write from home, and before we had the cloud-based thing, I would simply email my story and my photos, and then they would pull them into the system from the email and, edit them and process the photos and so on and so forth. And then when we got cloud-based, I just plugged everything directly into the cloud. That was around 2010. Might have been a little later than that. But in any event, yeah, I was rewarded with nearly being terminated by the managing editor at the time because she was a bitch and a control freak and loved micromanaging people and loved seeing people in the office because that way she could tell them what to do. And I did not lament her being let go in 2012. Let me put it to you that way. But yeah, I was rewarded by nearly being terminated because I wasn't in the office enough, and I was furious when I heard that the discussion had even been had about that. I said, "Did you mention to this woman that I have the most bylines and most social media followers and most of everything of anyone in the office, that I was hired as a field guy, not a layout guy?" He says, "Yeah, that's part of why they backed off on the thought of doing that." I said, "Well, that's good, because I don't know if she's aware, but you might want to tell her also that it's my understanding that fewer than 45% of all sporting events take place in our newsroom." Oh man, I was pissed. It's one of 2 times I can think of in 14 years at the paper that I was pissed off at a coworker. And the other time, it was someone who handled electronics that we were given. And they made the wrong comment to me, and I lit them up in an email, and I didn't care at that point. I was so mad. You ever get so mad you don't care? Yeah, that's how mad I got. So, County Little League Championship, yeah, that's cool if it's an hour and 10 minutes. And yeah, it's okay if a game goes fairly quickly if you're trying to make deadline. But if you're talking about a 4 o'clock ball game and you got a copy deadline of 11 p.m. and the game is half an hour from your house, you quite honestly had damn well better get that story done, okay? Here's how the timeline would work if I had a 4 o'clock ball game at, say, when I was living in Trapp, Maryland at the time. Let's say when I was living in Trapp, if the ball game was in, say, St. Michael's. 4 o'clock ball game in St. Michael's. St. Michael's is about a half-hour commute from Trapp. Where I was living in Cambridge, it was about a 40 to 45-minute commute. So I always wanted to be there an hour early, so I would leave 2:15 or 2:30, get there around 3, grab my folding chair, my camera, and my work bag with my, score pad and stuff in it, and walk about 150 yards from where I parked along the line of trees there at Harold Baines Field, and go to the game at 3. Then I would, I'd assemble my chair, get my scorebook out, get my phone out that had my camera, and go over to, first I would talk to the visiting team's head coach. In high school, they don't have managers. Well, they do, but the manager of a high school baseball team is a 15-year-old girl named Mackenzie who doesn't know how to use the damn scorebook. Because they're always named Kelsey or Mackenzie or Chelsea, or it's always some 15-year-old bubble-headed girl who's got too much time spent in her phone. And when you go to get a lineup from some of these schools, the head coach wouldn't write the full names down on the lineup card, or they had already given the one lineup card they had to the other team. In any event, I can remember one time at my old high school going into the home team dugout, talking to the scorekeeper, manager, and looking at the scorebook to get the lineup and the rest of the roster, and all the girl had listed was first names. I said, yeah, I need full names here. What? I need full names for all the players? Full names? I said, yeah, they have last names, right? They're not all supermodels. Are they? Oh, hold on. And then she had to ask her friend, hey, what's so-and-so's last name? What's so-and-so's last name? Well, what about so-and-so? So I had to stand here and deal with these two teenagers trying to get lineup straight. And I used to offer a free 2-hour clinic on how to use a baseball scorebook. If any head coach had ever wanted, they could send their manager to, it was by appointment. You could set it up whenever you wanted to do it. It was 2 hours of me explaining how to score baseball. It's actually quite simple once you get it figured out. There are only 9 positions. Pitchers 1, catchers 2, first base is 3, second base is 4, third base is 5. Shortstop, who used to be an outfielder at one point, was called short scout, was 6. That's why when you go right to left across the infield, it doesn't go 3, 4, 5, 6 from first base to third. It goes 3, 4, 6, 5. And then in the outfield, going from left to right, left field's 7, center field's 8, right field's 9. It's a very simple process. And whenever any of them handle the ball, you simply write down the number of the position as part of the whole play. But anyway, I had a standing offer of a 2-hour seminar on how to score baseball. And I had decided, never got any takers, but I had decided that the first hour and 59 minutes I would spend simply repeating the phrase, put down your fucking phone. That's what I was going to spend almost the entire seminar saying. Because I can't count how many times I would walk into a dugout to ask for clarification on something. Oh, I don't know. I was on my phone. Why are you scorekeeping a baseball game for your team, for your school, if your phone is more important? Put the book down and go play on your phone. Or put the phone down and do your job. Okay, yeah, I get it. You're a teenage unpaid volunteer. But you know what? The coach is getting exactly what he's paying you for. Nothing. Okay? He's getting exactly what you're getting paid. Nothing. So anyway, get there. I would go to the visiting team's dugout, get the lineup from the visiting team's head coach, because after a certain point I stopped talking to managers entirely because it just wasn't worth the hassle, and get the bench players to put on the, scorebook page below the lineup. Talk to the coach about, is anybody injured? Did anybody get their girlfriend pregnant? Anybody get arrested? Did anybody get suspended? Did anybody not, wash his athletic supporter and get, temporarily tossed from the team? Did anybody fail to make grade check? Is everybody here? And so on and so forth. How you doing? How's everybody feeling? How's the wife? It's typical small talk that a sports writer would make with a baseball coach before a game. And then I would go to the manager or the home team dugout and repeat the process. See, I'm still not awake. I've been up for 2 hours and 15 minutes and I'm still not awake. Anyway, so that would take 10 minutes. So by 10 after 15, 3:15, I've set up, got my lineups. Then I go sit down, get everything written out properly, and set up my scorebooks so that I had all my other important trivia available to be recorded when it happened. I'd probably take a couple minutes somewhere in there saying hi to the home plate ump, getting the names of the crew, because I always kept track. After about 8 or 9 years, it got to the point where I knew every umpire around, and I'd be like, okay, got Steve on first, Fred's doing the plate, and Tommy's doing third. And I was eventually going to do a study of umpires and see what their strike zones were like and see what, things were like that, but I never got quite that arcane with it. But anyway, that was the process there. So again, your 4:00 ball game, you leave the house at 2:30, you get there at 3, you spend 15 minutes getting lineups, 5 or 6 more minutes talking to the umpires. It's now 3:20 and you're set up. Sit down, get everything written out, go to the concession stand if they have one. In St. Michael's case, they do. It's a nice little barn right behind home plate where you can get all kinds of stuff. They even have Polish sausages there, which, or at least they used to, which I particularly loved. And get my obligatory can of Dr. Pepper and a pack of M&Ms. And of course, I also had my radar gun that I took with me, a little $80 Bushnell radar gun. It was more of a timing device than a radar gun, and it was always 5% slow. So if it was an 80-mile-an-hour pitch, in reality, the gun would show it at 76. So I always knew that whenever I clocked a pitch, I had to add 5% to the speed. But anyway, game starts at 4. Baseball game, a high school game, would take you about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Take you about 20 minutes per inning, give or take. Some games were 1:50, some games were 2 hours and 40. But on average, about 2:20, maybe 2:15 to get them knocked out. And then it would take me another 15 minutes of post-game to interview, maybe this or that player who had the key play or who struck out 13 batters or whatever the case might be. And then talk to both head coaches, because someday I'll tell you about the competitor paper and how they only talked to one coach after each game, which I thought was one of the lazier aspects of their journalism. But by the time it's all said and done, I'm leaving the ballpark at 6:45, give or take. So half-hour drive home, 7:15. I've got 3 hours and 45 minutes to write a game story of a sport that I love, that I know inside and out, that I just watched, that I detailed in, that I, score kept in excruciatingly tight detail. That's all the time in the world. It's funny when you think back as a reporter for a newspaper, and you think back to, say, middle school. I can remember in 6th grade, I had to do an essay on masonry. I had to do an essay on masonry during the colonial era. We were discussing in social studies. We were doing a unit on the colonial era. And everybody got a topic of a different career that someone had back then, and I ended up with masonry. Well, my dad, among the many things my dad has done in his lifetime, has laid his share of bricks. I'll say that much. He's laid my share too. And I helped him do masonry work a little bit when I was in high school. But in middle school, I knew diddly squat about masonry. And I can remember being given a month to write a 600 to 1,000 word essay on masonry in the colonial era. And to me, it was like one of the labors of Hercules at the tender age of 11, trying to write 600 words about that topic in a month. A month! Okay, it's May 15th right now. I would have until Father's Day, basically, to get it written. And I barely got it done. I procrastinated and I dicked around and was slow to get research done and so on and so forth, and got it written the night before, as of course 95% of kids do. Well, here I am at 7:15 on some idle Wednesday in late April, and I've just come back from a ball game half hour from home, and I have 3 hours and 45 minutes to write 800 to 1,000 words and process several photographs. Basically pick through the 60 or 70 photos I took of the game and find maybe 3 that I thought might be the best to run in the paper. That's all the time in the world. I could do the job twice in that much time. I could do it probably 3 times in that much time. It got to the point where now I'm self-taught as a typist, and I'm proud to say that I can type 90 words a minute. If you take out the errors, I'm at about 77. So I'm a very good, very quick typist. And I just saw something breaking in the news that we'll discuss in a minute. So we are going to segue into politics. And let me cut this story a little bit shorter because we're 50 minutes in. But, oh, God, I forgot. So, yeah, 3 hours and 45 minutes. It would take me... I can type 90 words a minute, take out the errors, I'm at 77. I would net 40 to 50 words a minute writing a game story. I could knock out a 1,000-word game story in 20 to 25 minutes without a hassle. And every time when I would get it done and do a word count, I'd be like, wow, how long would that have taken me in middle school? You know, and when you do it over and over and over, and you have 4 million words in print like I do, it becomes a very easy habit to maintain. And it's funny how years away from the business and then having a case of writer's block and then having some horrifically bad life events take place, how I no longer really have that talent. It's become a lot harder for me to write. Now I'm doing creative writing now instead of reporting and journalism. So that's a little bit of it because all I had to do was report what happened, plug in a couple of quotes, make it an interesting read in the process, put up 2 or 3 photos, and plug it into the cloud, and then wait for my boss maybe to call to see if there was something I needed to clarify with him. That was gravy. That was, if I got home at 7:15, I'd make dinner. I'd sit with the kids for a little while. I wouldn't start writing until 8:30, and then by 9:15, I'd have everything done. And the art would take me longer than the writing because I was really finicky about photos. And learned from a coworker, Dustin, who eventually, he was nominally my boss, but he never treated me like he was my boss, which was a wonderful thing. But in terms of the hierarchy, he was the editor of papers that I was the sports guy for. And they were small weekly papers in Dorchester and Caroline County. And he never gave me an assignment. He never told me where to go. Never. My editor at the paper, the core paper, the flagship paper that I worked for, hardly ever gave me an assignment after the first year because I would say, hey, Biffy, I'm going to such and such a game. I'm going to Parkside against Easton, baseball. It's going to be a good game. I'll have a story to you by 10 or 9 or whatever the case may be. And yeah, that's how I rolled. I could knock it out very quickly and was very proud of that fact because I didn't write crap. It wasn't just filler copy. It was interesting. Now, after a certain point, I did get burned out and I had to resort to mental templates of basically 3 different ways to write the story. But it still was interesting to read. And after I officially felt like I was burned out, that was when I actually won the awards that I won in the industry. So I guess I wasn't as burned out as I thought. Maybe I was just tired a lot. I don't know. But anyway, there's the story there. And real quick, we're going to go back into politics. Looks like Fox News is reporting longtime Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat from Tennessee, announces end to re-election bid. Here's what's happened here. Steve Cohen is the crusty old white Jewish fella that I was talking about that was representing a black district, supposedly, in Tennessee, specifically Memphis area. It's, I believe, the 9th Congressional District of Tennessee has announced he's not going to run for re-election. Why? Because he got redistricted to a point where it's not a racially gerrymandered district anymore because the Supreme Court declared that illegal. So now instead of this crusty old white dude beating out a black candidate to represent black people in Memphis, which is primarily black, then there will probably be a black female Republican representing black people in Memphis. Oh, the horror! So when I talk about stuff, I know what I'm frickin' talking about, because this is precisely the argument the Democrats have. And as with any argument from the left, if you give it 10 seconds of scrutiny and logical thinking and research, you immediately realize it's a bunch of crap. That's pretty much the whole Democratic platform, is based on deception and lies and pretending that people are victims and trying to make victims out of more people. It's all lies and victimhood. That's the whole left's platform. That and a golem-like hatred for Donald Trump. And I have my moments where I scratch my head and wonder what the hell the guy's thinking. Like that whole Greenland meme that they did a while back where he's holding hands with a penguin, and penguins don't live at the friggin' North Pole. They live in Antarctica, among other places, and the Galapagos Islands. I don't know why. But yeah, he's announcing his end to his re-election bid because they didn't gerrymander the district so he would get, 80% of the voters being black, so he'd carry 76% of the vote because 95% of the black population would vote Democrat. Now they're going to actually have a chance to vote for, well, they had the chance anyway, but they got brainwashed into thinking that the Democratic Party cares so much about them, the party that enslaved them and then hit them with poll taxes and lynched them and had a Klan member in the Senate until 2010, Robert Byrd, West Virginia, who was Senate Majority Leader from 1977, I think, to 1989. This guy was a recruiter for the Klan. But he said that he didn't want to be in the Klan anymore, and he denounced the Klan, so he's forgiven because he's got a D after his name. So this is hilarious. Bye, Steve. Hi, Steve. Bye, Steve. He's going to be, actually, I'm sure he'll get a job on CNN commentating about racial injustice, this crusty old white dude. So that's funny. That's just really hilarious. So anyway, the Hobbit Incident of 1983, and then we're going to wrap things up. 1983, was it 1983? No, it was actually 1982. It was the fall of 1982, Cape St. Clair, Maryland. I'm sitting in a school bus, or not a school bus, a charter bus. The seventh grade. It was seventh grade, yeah. We were in seventh grade, and the class had just gone on a field trip to somewhere on Maryland's western shore, and we were heading back to North Dorchester Middle School, which is located outside of Hurlock, Maryland, in the little neighborhood called Shiloh. I'm sitting in the bus waiting for everyone to get out of either the McDonald's or the Wendy's next door, because they stopped the bus so we could get dinner on the way back from whatever trip this was we were going on, because I remember it was about 4 or 5 p.m. So we stopped to get food on the way home. And my friend Jason, I'm not going to say his last name, my friend Jason gets on the bus, and he's carrying his jacket in his hands. And he reaches in his jacket and pulls out a paperback book and says, "Hey, want to read The Hobbit?" I got to level with you. I had just barely become cognizant of things like that and just had started playing D&D at this point. So this makes me think, really, that I started in 83, not 82. Because this happened in the fall of 82. Anyway, want to read The Hobbit? It's like, no, I'm okay. And not 5 seconds later, a teacher steps into the bus up by the driver and says, "We need everybody to get off the bus real quick." Okay. So we all get off the bus, and there's this dude standing there, this middle-aged dude whom I don't know, and he points at Jason and says, "That's the one." The man worked at a sporting goods supply store, specifically hunting and fishing supplies that was next to the Wendy's at Cape St. Clair, Maryland, just off eastbound 50, just before you get to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. I believe it's the William Preston Lane Memorial Bridge is what it's officially called, connecting the Eastern Shore and Western Shore. And it's one of what should be about 6 bridges across the Chesapeake, but it's the only true bridge across the Chesapeake Bay because the bridge tunnel down near Hampton, Virginia is a bridge and a tunnel. So anyway, the 4.3 mile Memorial or William Preston Lane Memorial Bridge, we're sitting in the parking lot of I think it was a side lot of the McDonald's. And the guy points to Jason and says, "That's the one." Well, little did I know that while I was at McDonald's eating with other friends, Jason had gone over to this hunting and fishing supply place and allegedly had absconded with a box of shotgun shells. I don't know why. But in any event, my 13-year-old classmate, 12 years old, classmate had decided that he wanted a box of shotgun shells, apparently, and open up your jacket, which he was holding, balled up in his hands. He was like, no. And this standoff lasted for about 30 seconds, and finally a teacher and the man spoke, and the police were called. And Jason was arrested and charged, I believe, with shoplifting. And they had to take him back to the police station. I guess it was the Annapolis police. They took him back to the police station, or maybe it was the Anne Arundel County cops. But anyway, we took him back to the police station and booked him. And we're sitting on the bus this whole time. And it's a matter of several hours waiting for this process to take place. So Jason got arrested. And, they released him. I don't think they ROR'd him. I think they released him into custody of a parent. I think because they had to get his mom, to come up from, where she lived, which was an hour drive plus into Annapolis to pick him up. And, that's the Hobbit Incident of 1982. We ended up getting home that night, and, of course, every parent in the 7th grade who had a kid on one of the 2 buses, and I always noticed that whenever we went on multiple buses, if they were charter buses, one of the buses had a bathroom on it, but I was always on the bus that didn't. Never understood that. But because I bet that happened 10 times. That, not that I have a problem using the bathroom a lot or anything, but I'm just saying it would have been nice. So, yeah. So Jason got arrested for shoplifting. We had to wait several hours for him to get booked for shoplifting. And then we went back to the school, and that was the talk of the school for the next week. And people were joking we referred to him as Shelley at that point, as in Shotgun Shelley. And I didn't read The Hobbit at that point. I did read it later on in that school year. And then, of course, that led me to The Lord of the Rings, which I read in 8th grade. And I think I've read that. I think I've read Lord of the Rings a half dozen times now. I can't say I've read it as often as the late Christopher Lee. Sir Christopher used to read The Lord of the Rings once a year. And he actually was the only member of the cast of The Fellowship of the Ring who had met J.R.R. Tolkien. Of course, he had quite a life. He was descended from Charlemagne and spoke several languages, was basically a black ops guy during World War II, and he lived quite a life. Plus, he made a crap ton of movies, a lot of which were horror, Dracula-type films. But he played, of course, Saruman in the Lord of the Rings movies. And, so that's the Hobbit Incident of 1982. Cape St. Clair, Maryland. And that is part of why I have a connection to The Hobbit. Not just because it's good literature, but because of that weird incident where instead of going to get something to eat, someone decided to go browse on a sporting goods store and steal a box of shotgun shells, allegedly. I don't know. I just work here. But that's one of the many odd stories that we've seen in my day, and there you go. But anyway, I'm going to keep looking around on this Cloud Kingdom Games website. I strongly recommend getting stuff from them. They're not a huge company, but they have, they have a lot of stuff. And I remember being on the mailing list where they would send you this riddle once a week. So I'm going to see if I can figure out how to do that again. There it is. Sign up for Riddle of the Week. You're darn right I'm doing it. And I'm putting the email for the podcast in there, wspdpod@gmail.com. So that's going to bring us to the end of things today. I thank you for listening. I apologize for not having done any damn show prep. It's been a rough week. It's been a very stressful week. But the dam broke last night. Got some incredibly good news that alleviated the stress, and I feel like I can breathe again. We've had, some stuff. I can tell you right now, it's all financial. It just Yeah. So, wow. Prove you're not a robot by picking which of these tastes the best. You ready? Lead McNuggets, AAA batteries, or uranium ore, motor oil, silicon dioxide, and pizza. I'm going to go ahead and go with pizza, but I'm told that uranium is really spicy. Anyway, I'm now on Riddle of the Week for Cloud Kingdom Games, so maybe I'll be talking about that from time to time, because they're a great company, and they don't sponsor me. I mean, I don't think they have the budget where they could afford to sponsor anybody significantly, unless they buy me a pizza, hey, once a week. So, yeah. Anyway, we're going to wrap things up. Yeah, we're going to call this one the disjointed episode, but thanks again for listening. I appreciate your time. Sign up on the Patreon page, patreon.com/WSPDragons. I will go into more detail about baseball and a fantasy campaign in the next podcast. I totally glossed over that subject, so forgive me there. I did not do a weekly movie recommendation either, so I will hit you up with that on Monday as well. Make sure to follow this show on Twitter. The handle is at the WSPD Podcast. Had a tweet last night. I only have 95 followers, but I can remember at the start of this podcast I had 0. So we've gone from 0 to 95 followers in just, 3 months. So I'm happy for that. And had something I said last night on Twitter, got 300 plus likes and is still climbing. We were talking about the George Washington movie that's coming out, and a man said it was amazing to me. Basically, he said that it was amazing to him that George Washington essentially started a world war that engulfed half the globe when he was just the equivalent of a captain in the National Guard, because the Jumonville incident from back in 1754 kind of triggered the 7 Years' War in Europe and what was known as the French and Indian War here. And he said that, and I said, wait till you find out what a 19-year-old unemployed Serb can do with just 2 pistol shots. And that's the comment that got me over 300 likes. So I'm throwing some bangers out on there. I really am, when I'm not busy insulting people for not understanding what fascism is. But, yeah. Follow us on Twitter. The handle's the WSPD Podcast, patreon.com/WSPDragons, Cash App and Venmo, WSPD Pod. Follow us here on Spotify, where we began, as well as iHeartRadio, Audible, and Amazon. Thanks for your time. We'll talk again on Monday. Have a great weekend, and to paraphrase Joseph Stalin, God bless the British Conservative Party. Take care. Bye-bye. Free Iran!